Look at this crazy dude. That's a Canadian, but he's not a salty Canadian. That's me. Hi, I'm Edwin. I'm going to be teaching you Pebble development. Okay, so now, sweet. This is our awesome weather app. You can see it's pretty advanced. It's a white screen. Not very exciting, I know. So let's set up something in our splash window load function. What we're going to be showing you today is how to set up an image and how to set up a text layer. So a layer that displays text. So let's start with the image. So in Pebble, you usually will use what's called a bitmap layer. And a bitmap layer allows you to display a bitmap. And those are created, well, that's a layer, but you have to give it a gbitmap, which is another pointer that is loaded from a PNG resource that you put into the project. So let's say you download a PNG of a little kitten, right? You put that in your project. You're going to create a gbitmap from that resource of the kitten. Now the gbitmap pointer is going to represent your kitten, and you're going to pass that gbitmap into your bitmap layer, and it's going to set it on the bitmap layer to actually display the image. Okay, sweet. So we're going to actually download a weather icon here. So I'm just going to look up weather icon PNG. Go to images. I don't know what yours will look like when you watch this video, but as of filming, I like this one. It's nice and simple. We're going to download this. Thank you to micahford.com for this. So I already have it downloaded in this resources folder of mine, so I'm going to keep it there. I also renamed it to weather_icon.png just for simplicity. And we're going to go back into our Cloud Pebble project, wherever we have that. We're going to click Add New on our resources. And this is a whole lot of stuff we fill out just for one resource, but it's all really great. So the resource type we're going to leave as bitmap image. We'll deal with true type fonts later, and you do not have to worry about these four unless you want to. The file name, that will be filled in when we upload, I believe, and the identifier is what's going to be actually represented in our code. So we're going to type image splash, maybe just image splash, and then leave these memory, storage, and space optimization options. Also, target platforms, you can check this if you want to, for example, just have one image. Let's say you have one image with the same identifier, but you have like a different resource for Basalt, and then you have a different resource for Applite. Then you can just go on and check just Basalt for this image, for example, and then upload another one and just check Applite, and it will switch them depending on the platform. But we're going to leave that as all right now because it's a nice black and white image. It works well. We're going to choose our file. All right. We're going to go back a folder. Where are we here? Resources. Okay. Weather icon. And we do want the platforms. Yes. Resource tags. You can add tags so it says, like, this is color, this is monochrome, whatever, but we're just going to leave the tags right now, and we're going to click save. Okay, great. So now we have our bitmap image set up with this identifier image splash, and here's our little preview platform. I've also resized this image to 100 by 100 so we don't have to worry about it very much. I recommend you do that as well. Just hop in like Windows Paint or Paintbrush, whatever you use for your free image client or Photoshop or whatever. Okay, so now we've got the resource in our project. We're going to have to include it in our splash window here. So I'm going to create a bitmap layer called splash image layer and a gbitmap called splash image. Okay, so our splash image is created pretty easily. So we type splash image equals gbitmap _create _with _resource. And this is where we type our resource ID. So every resource ID is prefaced. So before the actual resource ID, you type resource ID underscore, and then the resource ID that you typed in there. So we're going to type image splash, and that should create our splash image pointer. So now that we've got that set up, we're going to set up our splash image bitmap layer. So this, like most layers, is set up with a function that is like bitmap underscore layer underscore create. So splash image layer equals bitmap layer create, and then you pass in your grect. So this grect is a frame that will fit within your bitmap layer. The bitmap layer will have a frame of whatever grect you pass into this. And remember how I said the Windows frame was 144 by 168 on AppLight and Basalt? Well, that window frame is the window root layer. So that is what is the furthest most layer, I guess. It's like the deepest layer, and anything you put on top of that has a subframe of whatever you set to that. So we're going to set this subframe of grect 00 144 168. So just the normal frame of the window layer. It's going to equal, and then we're going to do this. We're going to call bitmap layer set bitmap. We're going to put in as our first parameter the bitmap layer we want to pass and the image we want to pass into it. So splash image. Then we have an interesting function that we have to call called bitmap layer set compositing mode. I hope I spelled that right. Splash image layer is again our first parameter, and our second one, just trust me here, is gcomp set. Okay, I'll explain that in 1 second. Before we do that, we're gonna type bitmap. We're gonna type layer add child. Okay, and then we're gonna first type window underscore layer, and then bitmap layer get layer. That's a function, and as its parameter you must pass our bitmap layer splash image layer. But what is this window layer? I know, right? Okay, so we're gonna set that up now. We're gonna create a layer pointer called window layer and set it equal to window get root layer of the window. Okay. Okay, let's slow down. We've got all of our code typed. Pause if you need, copy that all down. I'm gonna explain it now. So the bitmap layer set compositing mode. So what this does, Pebble explains this much better on their developer documentation. They have a bunch of compositing modes of how to draw images. And with our image that we downloaded here, our little icon, it has transparency. And if you want to display transparency, you have to type gcomp set. And honestly, I cannot explain to you precisely why, but you just do this with gcomp set. There's like gcomp and gcomp or a couple other ones that you can use depending on what you want to draw. If you go on developer.pebble.com and look up gcomp, you can look at all of them and see the images they have actually explaining how they all work. So we'll just hop over there real quick. So gcomp op, and here you can see they have a demonstration. So gcomp assign inverted, and or set and clear. But we're just going to be sticking with set right now. Don't worry about it if you don't fully understand. Just follow along. Okay, and then we did this layer add child thing. And remember how I was talking about how there was, the window root layer was the deepest, most layer of the screen? Well, that's sort of what this is all about. So layer add child. So what this means is, so you have a layer and you want to add a child. So you want to add something on top of that. Imagine you have like a literal parent and a literal child. The child comes after the parent, right? And this is how the layers work. So you have a parent layer, which is our window layer here. It's the actual layer that is alongside this splash window. It's inside of this window. And it is its root layer. So it's the actual Windows layer. And then you want to add a child to that. So you want to add a sublayer. You want to add something on top of that so you can actually display something, right? And that's what this function does. So you pass in the layer that you want to have a child added to as your first parameter. So we're passing in window layer. And then you're passing in the layer that you want to add on top of that. So what this function does, BitmapLayer getLayer, it's a convenience function to make the splash image layer an actual layer. Because notice how this isn't just a layer, it's a bitmap layer. It literally says bitmap layer. And that is why we have to call this function. We have to call BitmapLayer getLayer because it is not a layer by itself. We will get an error if we just do this. You can try that if you want. It'll, pardon me, it'll scream at you. Okay, so now we've got that all down. Let's click run. Hope that I typed it all right. Okay, nice. Let's keep we got to keep a score count of how many I get in a row. Okay, so dismiss. Here we are with our icon, beautifully centered in the screen. I think it looks nice, 100 by 100. But we want to add a little bit of text to that, right? Maybe something that says weather app. So let's do that with a text layer. So now that you've got the basics of how to create a layer down, the next one will actually be much simpler. So we're going to create a text layer pointer called splash image title. And we're going to set this splash image title. Guess what it's equal to? Text layer create. Okay? And the grect we're going to deal with in 1 second. Right now we're just going to set it 144, 168. Then we're going to call text layer set text. Our first parameter, yet again, is splash image title. And then we're going to pass in our text. I'm just going to say weather app. You can say whatever you want. And then we're going to say, again, layer add child. I'm going to pass our window layer. And then guess what we need to do to get our layer for the text layer? Text layer get layer. See how there are some patterns here? I want you guys to try to think about all of the Pebble functions as sort of a pattern there. They follow a very uniform approach, and I think it's really great. It's not random, it's not all over the place. You can pretty much get down the basics and then pick up any other layer function and roll with the whatever it provides you. Okay, so I said we'd deal with the frames, and that's what we'll do now. So you can see here, now we have two frames that are, 144 by 168 basically. We'll run this, and you'll see how it's a bit of an issue because we want our layers to actually split apart. We don't want them to be over top of each other. See right now how this layer is like covering the icon layer? That's not very nice, is it? So what we're going to do is we're going to center this bitmap layer. We're going to move it up a bit. So the grect parameters are x, y, w, h, and that means the x coordinate goes first, the y coordinate goes second, the width of the layer goes third, and the height of the layer goes fourth. So what we have here is a grect that starts at the point 0, 0, so that's the top left corner. And then it expands 144 to the right, so to the very far right corner, and then it goes 168 down. So imagine if you split that 144 in half, then you'd have, 72. So it would go 72 across to about here, and 168 would go like about here if you split it in half, right? So what we're going to do is just shrink this 168 a bit. I'm going to shrink it down to 120 because our picture is only 100 by 100, right? So that should give us a nice amount of room. And then here on our grect, we want this splash image title to be below our image, right? So I'm going to set the y coordinate to be 120 as well. I'm going to just decrease the height here to 50, but the text layer will always draw from the top to the bottom. So now we have these layers set up, and we're going to run the app again and see our magic in action. Awesome. Now we can see our two layers side by side, all friendly with each other. And we want our text centered, don't we? We don't want it just aligned to the left. So we want to type TextLayer set text alignment. We're going to pass in, guess what, our splash image title, TextLayer pointer, and then we're going to pass in a parameter called gText alignment center. Now there are a few types of gText alignments. You can type gText alignment left, center, and right, and they are pretty self-explanatory. That's how you align the text. We're going to run this again, and we should see that the weather app text layer will perfectly align itself in the middle with us having to do no more work. There you go. Isn't that nice? Okay, so things are slowing down now, guys. We're in the last part of the tutorial, and what we want to do is just clean up after ourselves, all right? That's what our mothers always said, right? They always said, you know, clean up after yourself. Don't leave a mess behind, and that's what we're going to be dealing with in our Pebble project. So in splash window unload, and in any unload function for a window, you want to destroy the layers and the resources that you've created, so that when you recreate the window, those resources don't collide. They don't keep, you know, using up all the memory, because you can have sort of a memory leak and all this stuff. It's just, it would get real messy if you don't clean up behind yourself. So we're going to type gbitmap destroy for our first one, and then we're going to pass in our splash image. I'm actually just going to separate these here, and then we're going to type bitmap layer destroy, and then our splash image layer, and guess what our text layer is going to be? Text layer destroy splash image title. Boom. So now we've destroyed all three of our resources. We have nothing left behind to clean up, at least here. And we're going to go back to our main.c, and here you can see we've already typed our splash window destroy. So this cleans up our window, and we should have nothing left behind. So we will run this again, and you can see it'll make no actual difference in the appearance of the app, but behind the scenes it's working some pure magic, all right? Yeah, so we've just unloaded our resources, and that is basically all for this tutorial. So I encourage you guys to play around with these layers, all right? Maybe set in another image, try the different compositing modes, okay? These are fun to play with, actually. Although they confuse me a bit still after years of Pebble development, I'm sure you can get them down if you just play with them a little bit and read the descriptions there. Not that I've read them very much myself. Play with the text layer. Look at the Pebble developer documentation on developer.getpebble.com, okay? There's way more functions than just this. You can set the background color of the text. You can set the color of the text. You can set the font of the text. There's a ton of things you can do, all right? I encourage you guys to play around with it a little bit. Make this a little more interesting, and we'll see you in the next one. All right, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.